Okay, let's talk about the horrendous, crushing disappointment that was Universal Soldier Regeneration. I knew as soon as it started what I was in for. As soon as I saw that blue tint and the Eastern European location and that camera quality, it's really hard to explain that because I think it's kind of like camcorder style cameras from that 2000s era where things are like smooth to the point that it's irritating. They're too smooth, but then also some single objects, some movements will seem like stilted and jerky. I don't know enough about cameras, clearly, to explain what I'm seeing, but I noticed that camera style right away. And I predicted, and I was correct, that Universal Soldier Regeneration, is it the Regeneration or just Regeneration? This movie is very much like all the Seagulls that I've seen clipped on So Bad It's Good on Jason Brandt's channel. That's like someone in Eastern Europe wants to make movies and knows that they can get a little bit of money if they hire an absolutely faded, affordable American action star to kind of put their name on the cover, do 1 or 2 days on set, and then they just make the movie they want to make anyways. Like this, like every Universal Soldier movie besides the first one, isn't a Universal Soldier movie, really. Like, these could be cyborgs, these could, like, these, I don't even think these people are resurrected from the dead. Like, there's some bizarre story in here about cloning and microchipping and yada yada yada. That's just, there's no point in fucking following it. But there's nothing thematically or canonically that links this to the previous movies. And if you know anything about the Universal Soldier movies, I feel sorry for you. You are as big a loser as I am. The canon is all fucked up. There's Universal Soldier, then there's Universal Soldier 2 and 3, which were made for TV movies that don't have Van Damme in them. Then there was Universal Soldier The Return, which does have Van Damme in it, and does consider itself canon from the first one. Obviously, everything has to be canon from the first one. But Regeneration, okay, but The Return doesn't consider 2 and 3 to be canon. And then Regeneration doesn't consider The Return to be canon. But this movie isn't a Universal Soldier movie fucking at all anyways. The closest, absolute closest thing is there's a little hint of Andrew Scott's character, played by Dolph Lundgren. One beer. I'm not even done my first beer and I can't say Lundgren. There's a little tiny hint in the performance. Like, you can just sort of see it, and in the writing it's just sort of there but not really. It's enough to be disappointing and not enough to be anything good. So yeah, there's no need to watch this movie if you're even curious about it, because that curiosity will not be rewarded. This movie is zero fun. It is zero interest. Even if you took Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren out and were just making a new movie in the Universal Soldier universe, this would still be pretty sucky, but at least it would be something, right? If it weren't trying to trick us into buying it with the nostalgia factor, you could at least say, like, okay, this takes place in the same universe. But it doesn't have any of the same themes. It doesn't have any of the same... The action is, dare I say, hit and miss. There's a Van Damme fight scene that I absolutely hated, where like he just beats up a guy in a bar, and he throws like one punch, and they just clip it like 6 times from the different angles, and there's so many quick cuts and everything like that, which was a horrendous style at the time, and is used to compensate when an actor can't do an actual fight scene, a la Liam Neeson in the later Taken movies where he can't jump over a fence. And that worried me. But then when the younger guys, all the Eastern European guys, who I'm sure made the movie for themselves, they have some okay fight scenes for that era and stuff like that. Like, there's absolutely nothing special about these fight scenes, but at least the camera's pulled back and there is choreography and they are doing moves. And so that's one of those things of like, I can almost say that's a good thing about the movie. I've digging really deep to try and say something nice about the movie. My first thought was the location is cool. I'm glad the location is real. There's not, if there is any CGI in this movie, I didn't catch it. It didn't jump out at me. They're running around this abandoned factory or whatever that's supposed to be Chernobyl. And it looks dope. It's a cool place to run around. And then the music is adequate. The music is never bad and out of place. It's nothing spectacular. A lot of times it's just like an electronic droning sound, a pulsing sound, and things like that that do a good enough job like adding some tension and some discomfort to moments that are supposed to be uncomfortable. So I'll give it that. The music doesn't get in the way. But then one of the things about Universal Soldier The Return that's good is that the music is bad. The music just jumps into that fucking new metal whenever an action scene is about to start, and it's hilarious. That's the thing. To try and lift my spirits after the horrible, depressing watch that was Regeneration, I just decided to watch The Return again. And it's still a delight. Like, it's atrocious. It's like 2 steps better than a student film. Like, it's a little bit better than the movies I would joke about making with my friends when I was a kid. But it's fun to watch. It's not annoying in any way. Regeneration takes itself seriously and thinks it's good, and the actors and writers think it's good, and it's all not. It all sucks. And I was so tempted to fast forward through bits because I knew exactly what was happening at all times. Like I said, from the color choice alone, I was like, oh crap, I know what we're doing here. And there are no characters that I give a shit about in this movie. And so I was like, any conversation, I was like, I can ballpark how long this is going to take and what they're going to cover. So I could fast forward it, but I promised I wouldn't. So I sat there being angry and really wasting the time. To the point I even felt like I was wasting beer by like just being really bummed out that this movie exists and that I'm forcing myself to finish watching it. And then drinking a beer and being like, but this isn't, you don't pour beer on this situation to make it better. Beer just makes it worse. So yeah, that's how fucking bad that movie is. And then, as I always do in these Van Damme watches, talk about what I'm going to watch next, and we know what that is. It's Day of Reckoning, which I had heard people say is good and interesting and cool, but now I'm really scared. Because now I think it's just going to be another dumb piece of shit, way too self-serious 2010s action movie. It's not going to be any fun. And like, I don't know what I could possibly want from another movie in the Universal Soldier universe. Because again, in case anyone is watching these in random orders, I got lost thinking about why anyone would be doing that. In case anyone is watching these in random orders, I love Universal Soldier. I think it's the best Van Damme movie. I think it is a good movie that stands on its own. It's a 90s action movie. It's fun and it's interesting. But it is a complete film. You could do other things in that universe because you could have other Unisols, and like, there could be the thing is there are no unanswered questions from the first one. I'm not even curious what Luke Devereaux does canonically from the first one, even though in the deleted scenes there is an ending where he lives out the rest of his sort of unlife in comfort and dies as it should be. Even though that's not in the first film, they just hug in credits and then body count plays. I think that's a good canonical acceptable ending. The reason that The Return doesn't feel like a Universal Soldier movie at all is that it makes no sense that Devereaux changes so much into swaggery, charming Van Damme, has a kid inexplicably, and works for the Unisol program now, and it's all above board and good, and they have a supercomputer, and then shit goes wrong with the supercomputer. That movie makes no sense, doesn't actually belong in a canonical universe. And I haven't seen 2 and 3, although I'm more and more tempted. And they're free on YouTube. Yeah, I know that Day of Reckoning is along the lines of Devereaux like forms a cult of Unisols and paints his face and fights Scott Atkins. I don't know much about it, except for the fact that I had heard, I think it was like the AV Club or someone, say that it was neat and it was experimental and they did a cool thing. It still doesn't make any sense canonically in a Universal Soldier movie, even that Devereaux lives in his undeath for 20 more years and like yeah, it doesn't make any sense. He's even in Regeneration, he's not a great soldier or anything like that. Like they're making new Unisols to assault this other group of Unisols, and they just do a worse job of it for whatever reason. But you don't need to pull Luke Devereaux out of retirement and re-brainwash him, which is part of Regeneration's story, and an explanation as to why he's barely in the movie. And there's no explanation whatsoever as to how there's a clone of Andrew Scott, who, if you recall, went through a wood chipper. Yeah, there's... So, I don't know what Day of Reckoning is going to be like, but I am not curious anymore. And unfortunately, I own it on DVD, because I saw it at Video Game Trader, and I don't own The Return, because it's free on YouTube. But if I do get a copy of The Return, I'm going to get it and send it to Jason Brandt, so that they can appreciate the So Bad It's Goodness of that movie. And then, like I said in the other one, I don't know what I'm going to watch next. Like, I'm out of fucking Van Damme movies that I could possibly be interested in or care about, so I will have to pick something else to kind of work through to feel like I'm organized and thoughtful and give myself a reason to talk to myself. Alright, I'll see you after Day of Reckoning. I'm not going to watch it right now. I don't know when I'm going to watch it. I'm not looking forward to it.